Lee Bruce. I'm marketing manager here at Ridge IT Cyber and the acting host and the stage crew pretty much for this event. So we will get started now and go through some pieces off the bat here, just a little bit about us. We have many wonderful customers that are joining us here today. We also have some new faces though. So to touch on Ridge a little bit, we offer managed IT and cybersecurity services. We protect over 500,000 customers around the world. It's also been a great honor for Ridge to be the #1 fastest growing MSSP on the Inc. 5000 list for the last 2 years in a row. So we're very proud of that. Today, we are in partnership with Picus Security for this webinar. They are technology partners of ours, but also great friends. They are a pioneer in breach and attack simulation. And throughout this webinar, you'll learn more about the Picus platform and what it can do for you. And now to introduce our panelists, our panel of experts for today. First, we have our Chief Strategy Officer here at Ridge, and that is Perry Schumacher. And joining us from Picus is Hussein Khan Yusel. He is Security Research Lead. And then as well from Picus, we have Rob Lazur, Senior Director for the Product Marketing. And just to do a little housekeeping, this is a 60-minute webinar session, 45-minute presentation, followed by 15-minute interactive Q&A. You can put your questions in the chat throughout the webinar, and we will answer those in that final portion of the Q&A section. Also, we'll be following up after the webinar with your complimentary copy of the Picus Red Report 2025. We will also send an action items checklist that can help you get started implementing the things that you'll learn today right away. In addition, we'll provide a case study that we have with one of our wonderful clients. Prime Insurance did a case study with Picus, and we'll provide that to you as well. And finally, the $100 gift card will be announced as well after the event. So look forward to that. And now we will pass it over to our panel of experts and get started with the webinar.
Yeah, so the Picus Red Report for this year breaks down over 1 million files that we analyzed last year, and 93% were malicious. What it reveals is that threats are evolving and what that means for security teams. So the goal is to provide insights to stay ahead, strengthen defenses, manage your cyber risk more effectively. So a few things you'll take away from that report is, for one, that there were 10 attacks that were predominant within that report. And, you'll find out why adversaries love them, how they're evolving. And then particularly around credential theft, which surged by 3x, and how they're weaponizing stolen credentials. And then it'll give you some insights into what you may want to look at within your own security profile. And Hussein's really the expert on this one. He's done, I don't know, about 150 pieces of research for us at Picus. So I thought, turn it over to the real expert here, so for Hussein, starting off with, what's the exec summary in that report? It's pretty big, and the executive summary in the report is pretty long onto itself. So for this audience, what are the parts of the report that really stand out to you that they should be aware of?
Thanks, Rob. Maybe we can skip 2 slides and start explaining from there. In the Red Report, we found that we analyzed millions of malware files and extracted 14 million malware techniques and mapped all of them to MITRE ATT&CK, so we can analyze them much better and understand what adversaries are doing in the wild. Next one, please. In our research, we found that adversaries are getting much more sophisticated and coordinated. On average, they are using 12 to 14 MITRE ATT&CK techniques, and they are chaining them in a well-coordinated manner so that they can execute an attack silently without creating any alerts in your system and delivering the impact for a long time. For example, for ransomware adversaries, they are trying to encrypt all of the systems, so they are trying to infiltrate all of your machines and deliver the final blow at once. for info stealers, they are trying to stay there as long as possible without being detected, so they can extract as much as information out of you. So the sophistication is in another level this year. And this year we also found that these top 10 techniques are used 93% of analyzed all malware. So if you are trying to utilize this information into your secure systems, you are blocking thousands of malwares. Your systems will be much safer if you are focusing on those techniques. Whether you are a beginner or an expert on the field, these techniques will help you get better at malware defense and overall security posture.
Yeah,
And
and
lastly, yeah, go ahead,
I
Rob.
was going to say, and one of the things I believe that's a part of the report is not so much that the attacks are becoming much more sophisticated, but they're being more highly targeted in who they're going after, right?
Yep, because adversaries are trying, depending on their objective, adversaries are trying to deliver much more impact and get more out of you. For example, if you are trying to steal your information, your data, they are not trying to create alerts and smash the windows and create much noise so you can detect them, but instead, they are trying to lay low and infiltrate as many machines as possible so they can extract valuable information such as credentials of your users so they can infiltrate other systems or other accounts, or get into more detailed information about your customers, your technology, so they can leverage them for ransomware, or they can sell it to your competitors, or try to dox you so they can get money out of you or defame you. So this is this is what we call the perfect heist. They are doing this without being detected for long periods of time. So that's why we saw a significant increase in info stealers and ransomware this year.
And as far as who they're targeting, what makes SMB, for example, an ideal target for these
Um,
actors?
Uh, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the adversaries. If I'm an opportunistic attacker who is looking for doing some damage or trying to get paid, I would try to target systems that are not well defended. For example, if I target Fortune 500 companies, they are well defended. They have budget for it. They have the security systems for it, security people for it. So it's a bigger fish to fry. So if I'm an opportunistic attacker, I would target SMBs that are not well defended, so I can extort them or create damage. So SMBs are ideal targets for these kind of attackers.
And somebody in the audience, James, has a question. What are the key steps organizations should take to defend against large-scale malware threats?
These top 10 techniques we extracted are serving this purpose, because when we look at the common denominators in these attacks, we can extract some knowledge for ourselves so we can defend ourselves better. For example, if we are focusing on the first technique, the process injection technique, we are defending well over thousands of malware attacks. So if we are focusing on these top 10 techniques, you will be covering 93% of the analyzed malware. So that's a very big chunk of malware attacks seen in the wild.
Might be a good time to hand over to Perry and talk about where things are today.
Yeah, and we're going to cover as we go along pretty in detail of things that you can do, James, as we get towards the end, and like specific steps that you should be taking to answer that, I guess, robustly. But we have a very broad audience here. Some of you I know personally, so thank you for coming. But we have a broad audience as far as skill set and cybersecurity. We have some SMBs and some large organizations. So I want to take do a quick step through 2 slides to get us all on the same page of what is the attacker doing, how are they getting in, and how are they exploiting you once they step foot on a device. And that's going to set us up to be able to talk about, James, the question that you asked. Well, how do we defend against this? But first, we need to understand what they're doing. So when we look at security, we've been around and we've been doing this for quite some time. And when we do it, we have a certain set of assumptions that we've lived by for a long time. Now, those assumptions are changing, and the adaptation to a new security model has been occurring over the past 2 years. But there's still a lot of people that have not moved there, right? So we're generally still in a castle and moat type of stage where we're assuming that people who are inside of my network are A-OK people, and people who are outside are the people that are vulnerable. But the thing that I just want to draw our attention to again is that, the definition of network has changed. So before COVID, definition of network was when you were in my office. Now the definition of network is in 1,000 homes that are undefended across the planet. So that idea of the castle and moat just completely got shattered during COVID, and which is why we saw a huge ransomware spike and cybersecurity problems, because our network went from, hey, this is my building, to, hey, this is Johnny's home. Right. And that really required a different architecture. It's not like, hey, that tool's going to fix it. We just had the wrong tool because it was a different job that we were trying to do. And the tools that we had, like a VPN, was never considered to really be 1,000 tunnels into my environment from unsecure areas. It was a couple of people that traveled, and that was it. It was a limited scope of attack surface that essentially got ginormous during COVID. And we know that that's not going to go back to the way it used to be. I mean, a lot of us are coming back to the office, but we have to recognize that it will never be the way it was before. So our landscape has indeed changed, and so should our mentality. The other thing that we look at is when we first started moving to data centers and cloud, say early 2000s, I was a late adopter to that. If somebody told me they were going to secure my machine better than I could, that was sitting in front of me in a room where I had access to the plug, I was going to kick them out of my office. So as time has changed, I have adopted and understand that now that the cloud resources that we have are substantially more secure than what we have on-prem. So this is, again, architecture changes that we see going on year over year. A lot of people have not made that change yet. And I want to talk about what Hussein did as far as like that initial access. What we've seen in our clients is that people are being way more opportunistic, right? Especially in the mid-size and small-size businesses. So let's say you're worth $250,000 or less if I impact you. At that point, really what they're doing is automated attacks and scanning. So that's the number one thing you need to fear, because that's what's coming after you. Nation state actors don't care, unless you're in a particular sector or industry. So when we're looking at the mid-market and SMB side, we need to make sure that we're protecting our perimeter and our defense with the standard practices that need to be implemented to create that level of security that we need. The other part that's changed in our attack surface, moving away from this traditional model that you can see here, is I put some icons up there of Facebook, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and your cell phone. One shift that we need to make in our mind is that before we were very worried about our emails, and rightfully so. But I go to Facebook, scroll down, and click on pictures that are not posted by your friends, and see how many of those are going to lead you to a website where you don't want to be. It's not the article. It's not the big blow up of the picture, but it's some website that's telling you that your browser is infected or something of that nature. And there's more complex versions of that are getting posted on Facebook, and Facebook honestly is doing a pretty poor job of filtering them out. I've clicked on them. So the threat landscape from that side of the messaging aspect is also vastly changed. So we need to start changing our mindset and understanding that our attack surface isn't just our network anymore, which most of us learned during COVID. And then also understand when we're talking about messaging and attack and landing, it isn't just email anymore. If we're in the construction industry, everybody there is SMSing and texting each other on the side of the road or inside of the job site. Right? How many of you have gotten a message at night while you're at home from FedEx giving you a delivery that you're never going to get? Right? So the attackers have been paying more attention, and we're seeing a rise in phishing and social engineering attempts from that side. So this is the old school architecture, kind of the way that they're getting in. So let's go to the next slide. What happens when they land, right? So when they get into your environment, hey, Federico, when they get into your environment, what are they doing? So first off, they're trying to see who you are. So they want to execute some kind of discovery. You know, who are you? What's around? Where are your computers? What do I need to go to? What are your vulnerabilities? They're asking all these questions. And then they're doing defense evasion. Now you'll notice in Picus's report, the number one thing was process injection. Well, that's a defense evasion technique. I want you to think that I'm a Windows process. I want you to think that I'm some process that you absolutely trust because I want to do something that you're not going to be happy with. And then they tend to try to go through credential access. So you'll see stuff like Mimikatz, memory dumps. They're going to go to your browser, try to dump whatever you have on your browser, because let's be honest, a lot of people's username and Facebook and password, or that password tends to be the same for their work. So they want to get that to be able to see if they can find some similarities there. They want to establish some persistence, right? So I want to make sure that when you reboot your computer, you don't get rid of me because we're in love. Then they want to make sure that they get command and control of your computer in some kind of permanent ways. And you can see that from, say, Cobalt Strike, all the way down to software you would expect to see. AnyDesk, TeamViewer. You would be surprised to know how many breaches we've worked with that have AnyDesk installed. Actually, I think that's probably the number one remote software I see in a breach is AnyDesk, right? So, and another key difference that we're seeing once they arrive and do that is going to Hussein's point. If you would have asked me 2 years ago, and if you were a client with me and bought 2 years ago, you probably heard me say the 1-10-60 rule. You know, 1 minute to detect, 10 minutes to start acting, 60 minutes to remediate. Well, in today's world, I'm not saying that rule doesn't apply, but before it was kind of like there was a smash and grab robbery. They came in, wanted to impact as fast as they could and send you a nice little crypto letter and send me some Bitcoin to this address. And they tried to do that as fast as they could. Because of that, they were tripping over a lot of alarms. What we're seeing today over the past, say, 6, 7, 8 months, or what we've noticed, is that they're taking their time now. Their planning phases are much more drawn out. Their version of impact is now different. They're not trying to get one thing, they're trying to get all things. And then the way that they're monetizing has also changed. Before it was send me Bitcoin. Now it's I'm going to sell your data. And it's been more, the profitability of selling data has been better for them, I would assume, because we're seeing that shift and people will modify their behavior to where money goes. So obviously there's some kind of incentive that is causing that kind of shift in the market of hackers that we've been observing over about the last 6 to 8 months. We can go to the next one, Lee. So now begs the question that James asked at the beginning, because this is the one that we really care about. Thank you very much for telling me how scared I should be. Now, what should I do about all these problems you just told me about, right? So you'll be surprised and at how many environments that we engage with that don't do some of the basic hygienes. Now, for those who want to, you can ask Lee. She can send you a speaking engagement our CEO did about device hardening, testing EDRs. We've got all the data behind this. By the way, we used Picus to get the vast majority of that data to see how they performed under different hardening situations. But Windows has given you new tools that have been available, some for 1 year, some for 2. And there's some that are coming out tomorrow, by the way. PowerShell, kind of pseudo from Linux, but working in PowerShell. I think that releases tomorrow or next week. That will limit your attack surface. It's hard to keep up with everything that every vendor and Microsoft is doing. So I want to present this to you today so you're aware. This is going to go from easiest to do, right? So these are things that if you walk away at the end of this, you can sit down, do this, and improve your security within the next 5 to 10 hours. So the easiest, all the way to the hardest, which require investments, intelligence, threat feeds. So I'm going to walk you through those different things. So first is device hardening. Windows has a thing called kernel mode protection. The second thing it has is memory protection. This is new. This is not 2 years ago, this wasn't in there. So this is new features inside of Windows that are not necessarily turned on by default, right? So Lee, can you bring up, go ahead and hit the magic button here. Now this screen is, for those of you who have CrowdStrike will be familiar with this. This is CrowdStrike's zero trust assessment, right? And inside of here, you can see the settings of the devices, and it will give you a score of the health of the device. And you can take a screenshot of this and take it if you want to know what to go into Intune and set to on instead of off. These are things that we can do with a little bit of elbow grease, push out to update our endpoints, and make sure it's that way throughout our environment using a tool that we likely already pay for if we buy Microsoft M licenses. So this costs you nothing except time, right? This is the list. Go make sure it's set up, make sure they're turned on, and then put that policy in place, and you'll get some immediate bang for your buck from this webinar. Now, Hussein, looking at the process injection issues that we're having, if I start enabling these settings, specifically, how would that impact you if you're trying to breach me? Like the difference between somebody who has these things turned on and off, like what does that look like to an attacker?
Uh, as we mentioned previously, the attackers that target SMBs are particularly not nation state actors, so they are not trying to be the most advanced attacker out there. So they have several rule sets, several attack techniques they have in their hand, and they try them one by one and try to get a reaction out of your system. If your system is hardened, those techniques would be less likely to be working. So if I encounter two machines, one is hardened, one is not, I would go follow the path of least resistance and try to attack that vulnerable systems that are not hardened. So I can elevate my chance of being successful and exfiltrate your data or ransom your data.
Okay, let's go to the next one, Lee. And this touches on the point of AnyDesk that I was making. Do you right now block every type of remote software, that remote control software, except for the one that you use? Again, we're talking about attack surface. So if I can do a process injection, I can masquerade, and then I can install AnyDesk, and you don't ever use AnyDesk, this is a problem, right? So, and again, these are basic hardening. Let me get that list of software that it can't be installed. Let me make sure that it cannot be installed. You can do this through your EDR. You can do this through Microsoft. There's several tools in which you can utilize to be able to leverage this. But if you know that part of the attack is going to contain an installation of likely a remote software that's going to aid them in their goal, well, let's take their tool away. Right? Let's reduce our attack surface. If all I use is TeamViewer, then that's all you get to install. Alternately, Microsoft has, you can do remote support through Microsoft Intune Suite. You don't need a third-party tool, right? So, and if you have questions about that, feel free. We'll follow up. We'll have a whole webinar about that and the new features that I know Microsoft is hard to keep up with. So we'll have something to go through all the details of that. But we can do that and just block all remote software, right? And that significantly reduces the attack surface and then takes away yet another tool from the attacker. So we're looking at this attack chain. We're like, okay, how do I disrupt it in as many places as possible and make it miserable? And most likely that they're going to trip an alarm, either stop them completely as I can't do it, or trip an alarm so I can do something about it. The other piece that we've seen that a lot of people are struggling with, particularly development shops. So if you do software development, or you have a whole lot of on-prem stuff, you got SQL database developers. Some of you know me, know that I cut my teeth in development. And back in the day, you gave me local admin on my machine, or I wasn't going to want to work for you. Today, I have a different view of that, obviously, because I work in security. But back when I didn't, what you mean I can't install Toad? I have to use Toad. I can't do database work without Toad. So a lot of environments still have a lot of admin accounts running around in the hands of people who don't need them. But there's a reason for that. Those people who don't need them need to do their job, and that's their argument. I can't slow down because I don't have an admin account. So how do we find a happy medium? Because credential dumping is real. Uh, each admin account is additional attack surface. That's real. So I need to be able to make sure that I reduce that attack surface to as little as possible. And so what we're looking at now is there's a lot of solutions out there that will give you kind of just-in-time privileges. And again, I hate to mention Microsoft, but just because everybody tends to buy it, and again, it's hard to keep up with it, you can do that with Microsoft Intune, the suite version. So what we want to see done, before, what do? We use PIM, right? We give you request, we give you access for a certain period of time to a help desk user without making you an admin, and then we wait for that to sync, and then he installs, and then over a period of time it goes away. But while he installs, he can install anything he wants. So how do we refine that to where I want to give you access right now? So when you, Mr. Developer, when you ask, the second I click yes, you can install. So there's no complaint there except how often I check my email. So that's the only delay. And that I'd only give you access to the very specific thing that you're installing. I don't want to give you carte blanche on everything that you want to install on that machine. And so there are tools out there. Again, I'm going to mention Intune Suite because that's there and most of us are familiar with it. You can do all these things through the Microsoft stack. So if you already have it, no additional investment. If you don't have it, the suite's a couple bucks. You can add that into your environment. You can do a trial period for it. But what we're doing there is we're now reducing that attack surface. So when I go in and do the credential dumping, I'm not going to get credentials that are administrative in nature. Right? I've reduced that attack surface. I've made my environment significantly more secure. And the key part about the speed of which that permission gets granted starts giving us credence when we're talking to the operational side that says you're slowing me down, right? Because that's the struggle. They also want security, but they just don't want to be slowed down by it. And so we can now have that conversation of, if it really isn't going to slow you down because it's instant, and it also provides a tremendous amount of security and gives us security professionals a better footing in being able to reduce that attack surface. The final thing, which is the hardest one of them all, is to start creating custom IOAs and custom IOCs inside of your environment to be able to detect these type of attacks, and particularly the ones that Hussein was mentioning. Now, Hussein, I'm going to hand this to you. If I'm creating a custom indicator of attack or an indicator of compromise, how am I going to go about knowing what in the world to even create?
For example, let's start with the process injection and how we detect it. Commonly, we check sysmon event ID 8, 7, and 10. However, legitimate processes are also using the process injection for legitimate purposes. So we need to differentiate the adversarial action and the legitimate action. That's why we focus on behavioral analytics. And for different threats, they use different tactics to implement process injection. We need to create indicators of attacks or compromise so we can teach our security controls to identify those malicious actions. However, implementation of process injection well over 100, so you cannot do the research, understand the research, and implement into your security controls one by one. It would take so much time and effort, and many of SMBs do not have that many resources to do so. So we need to automate this kind of work. For example, at Picus, we have a cross-track integration that allows users to deploy IOAs and IOCs automatically with a one click. So they can test the process injection technique, simulating their environment. If they are vulnerable, they can deploy the IOA and IOC to mitigate that, remediate that, and revalidate the attack and see that they can block this type of process injection. And rinse and repeat. We have hundreds of process injection samples, and for other techniques also, they can do this without much effort required, because it would take them hundreds of days and man hours to do so. But with automation, it's much more easier.
Okay. And so for here, the takeaways here, just to go, this is from easiest to do to hardest. right? So the easiest one to do is just let's roll up them sleeves and get the right settings in Intune and turn the things on that you need to turn on. The second one is reducing that attack surface with admin accounts, getting rid of the remote software that you don't use. That can require elbow grease. That might require a purchase of some new software. So that I rate that a little bit harder. And you need some analysis to make sure it's right for your company, right? We need to think about these things, not just go, hey, buy Intune or buy this other thing. You need to put some thought through it. And then finally, the last thing is the custom IOAs and IOCs. And I agree. I know that Picus now launched that new Magic CrowdStrike button, which I'm a very big fan of, because we used to have to write some of these on our own, and they were not easy. So there's a lot of coverage there. You run an attack. I see the process injection. I tell my guys, does it have an IOA and IOC from Picus? It does. Press the button, sends it over, and I'm done. So that piece was useful. For the ones that they don't cover, it's just a lot of research. So keep in mind that's threat feed, threat analysis, and being able to create those. All right, let's go to the next slide. Now, again, as we mentioned before about messaging, and I really want to hit this point because I just don't think enough of my client base and just cybersecurity in general is adopting to the new landscape. Those of you who have worked with us for quite some time know that we kind of try to sit on the bleeding edge as far as our thought process in cybersecurity as much as we can. And thanks to you guys, sometimes we do because you give us great feedback and insights on things you're doing. But it's really been weighing on us, the ability to protect our client base from that expanding usage of LinkedIn, in Facebook, WhatsApp, the SMSs. Like, how are we really going to provide protection for this basically new attack surface? I mean, it's not new, we've always had it, but it's actually now being exploited. It's an exploited vulnerability versus just being a vulnerability that's out there. So the first thing that we need to understand is that it's not a signature-based defense, right? So if we think back about how antiviruses used to work, right? I had a hash file. Hash file said this file is bad, and I just didn't let it detonate in my environment. I washed my hands clean, walked away declaring victory. Haha, we're safe. 0 day came out, and oh my God, I hope my virus definitions got updated in time, or else I am subjected to this 0 day. So in that world, they pretty quickly understood the problem, and they started implementing AI, right? They're like, look, I can't do this signature base. I need to look at your behavior. It's not who are you, not just who are you, but it's a lot about what are you doing? Why are you doing, why is it 80 degrees outside or 90 degrees outside and you're wearing a trench coat? I don't care how good of a guy you are. If it's 90 degrees outside and you're in a black trench coat, I'm concerned. And so we started going into the AI part on the EDR side, and that took off like wildfire, right? Every EDR has AI now. But when we look at the messaging space, I mean, to say that it lagged is a compliment. They really fell behind when it came to looking at analytics of messaging, what history of conversations, behavior of the conversations towards you. And that's why we're seeing a whole lot of breaches or attacks coming from those vectors. And again, not just email. We're looking at LinkedIn, Facebook, WhatsApp, your cell phone. I mean, some of you may know who Linus Tech is. Those of us who are older, we watched him. He taught us IT in a large degree. And this guy sent 90,000 Canadian dollars to the wrong person. He's way more tech savvy than Nancy in accounting. Right? He got phished and got his credentials exfilled just 3 weeks ago. Again, this guy's way, way more savvy than most of our user base. So this is a real threat that even the best people can fall for. And I want to touch a little bit about the use of AI in these attacks. Right now, all of you can pull up ChatGPT right now and ask it to create wonderful phishing emails for yourself, asking for certain information and personalizing it for you. There are AIs you can download and run on your desktop that you can do that with. I can spurn out so many convincing emails to phish you in seconds. And now I just need to send them. So the attack surface has expanded, and the ability to exploit it is greatly increased. When's the last time you got an email from a Nigerian prince with misspellings? Right? Once AI came in, suddenly they learned how to spell, huh? So those are the things that we got to look at when we're looking at our email defense and the defense on these other vectors. We really need to start looking at the companies that are advancing the most in the AI realm and behavioral analytics. The same thing that happened to EDRs is now happening to the email space. It's been in growth and movement for the last 2 years. So where you've really started seeing people come up with good things. There's been some version of AI in email for a while, but actually good, useful. It's been about 2, maybe 3 years that we've seen some players. So that's an area that I'd encourage all of you guys to look into and see what you can find there for behavior analytics. The other thing that we need to look at is that we've moved just from text to pictures, right? So QR-based attacks are certainly on the rise because you can't detect them in traditional software. Images. And then, I mean, all of us know there was a time where a .gov site had an FTP open where you could upload files and you could serve them with a .gov address. Right. So it's far more than just reputational blocking. It truly is AI analytics that's going to help us in that side of the world. And so I highly encourage all of our clients and anybody on this call to begin a project to research, how are you going to deal with this additional attack surface, and start shortlisting and looking through vendors that do real good AI analytics based on behavior to help mitigate those attack vectors. I'm going to, Hussein, from that point, I got a little bit wordy there. What's your perspective on all of that, since you track these guys pretty closely?
Well, actually, adversaries are using as much as information to get to you, and they try to extract as much as information out of you. Let me give you a white hat example. For example, if I were to do a bug bounty on a company, I would start with their LinkedIn ads and LinkedIn job postings to understand what they are using, which technologies they are using, which tools they are using, what kind of people they are needing, so I can understand and analyze and profile them. For example, if I find out that you are using a certain type of VPN or firewall, I would target that and try to find some vulnerabilities about those technologies and try to exploit them. After I land, I want to expand as much as possible. So your defenses are not the perimeter. No. Your defenses are the whole attack surface. You need to take into the consideration that your computers, your phones, your emails, your technologies, your everything can be turned against you. So you need to test your environment, test your parameters, and also test your internal security controls so they cannot exploit one vulnerability after one vulnerability. So you need to keep security in mind whenever you turn on any technology, you use any technology, and maintain those technologies. That's why the attack surface is expanding. However, limiting it is within our reach, within our capability. We need to limit as much as possible while we are using these technologies.
Yeah. And the other part that I want to touch on, and I'm going to move a little bit faster because I want to make sure you guys get the Q&A session. We have a couple of questions I want to make sure we get to. When we look at IP, I want to bring us back to when we started having the internet, and I know I'm getting older, and I still remember $2.95 AOL per minute charge to be able to log online. But when this technology was designed, the thought process behind it, the people who were making it weren't thinking about secure communications, right? They were thinking about ability to communicate. How do I facilitate an ability to be able to communicate across the world with all these computers? And that's really was the driving objective. The driving objective was not let me do the most secure communication method possible. And a lot of the things that we see going on today as far as exploitation on the network level. It uses the basis of our fundamental design of how we're communicating, because that was the objective. If you look at it, reverse proxy technology is far more secure than just creating a VPN tunnel. Yet we don't use that by standard. We use a VPN tunnel. Here, access everything. Port scan the whole server. Why not? So, and IPv6, IPv4 is very chatty. And those are the realities that we live in. So when we look at zero trust, I encourage everybody, and a lot of our clients, you've probably already done this. Most of those who are joining the call have moved in this direction already. But those who don't work with us, I'd encourage you to take a look at how you're allowing things to communicate. What are you doing about the vulnerabilities inside of the communication back and forth? And there are several ways that you can approach this. Again, VPNs, I hate them. If you want to put a tunnel between point A to point B, I really want to avoid it. So I'll tend to lean on things like reverse proxies, where I can limit visibility to a host port and protocol level. That way I know that this guy's not going to port scan my entire server when he's connecting to it in case he gets compromised. So when I'm talking about zero trust about networking, it really is taking a look at how our network communicates, moving into more of that reverse proxy style technology that's out there and fairly well developed in today's age, and implementing more of those principles inside of our networks. So that way, when they do land and they're trying to do discovery, they can't, because they can't scan the entire server of our critical assets. The other piece that I think is now starting to get cured, 3 or 4 years ago, this was a really big problem, but I think more and more people are doing it, is decrypting traffic. The entire internet is encrypted, right? When is the last time you went to a web page you wanted to be on that was an HTTPS? Right? So all your threats are in an HTTPS website and you're downloading them. If you can't see it, how are you stopping it? Right. And so that was a really big problem, say 3 or 4 years ago. I think people have opened their eyes to that vulnerability and have moved more and more to making sure they're decrypting packets to be able to understand what's coming in their environment and have some opportunity to detect malicious things that are trying to attack them. That's kind of the same thing as, umbrella, just blacklist half the internet, you'll be fine. It's more of a thing of, let me see what's coming through and I'll make a decision based on what it is. Not so much based on a reputation that you said you gave it. And the final piece is really internally trying to segment those things that will shut your business down from your users. Right. So when I'm talking about using that reverse proxy technology, in my perfect world, I'm throwing your tech up into the cloud and they're accessing it via reverse proxy. So if somebody, just ransomwares all my employees, as an SMB, as a large company, it'll still be a huge problem. But as an SMB, it wouldn't impact me that much because they can't get to the things I have in the cloud. It is reverse proxied in. So all of my key and core assets can't be affected, while my user base I can restore pretty quickly. Right. So it's adopting these architectures. And when we push zero trust, that's kind of what we're talking about. I value my data and the thing that closes my company down higher than I value my user. My user is the one who's going to expose me. Not many attacks start on your domain controller. They start on Nancy's computer and make their way to your domain controller, right? So the more I can isolate those things from the user and limit that communication, the stronger my posture will be. So I'm going to touch on this real quickly, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. The final thing I want to highlight is that a lot of the data that you've heard today is, one, based on Ridge IT's experience with a lot of our clients who are in attendance today. So thank you very much for the education we've received by working with you. And a lot of it is based on our extensive utilization of Picus's tools. So if you know me, you've heard this example before. If I go to a punching bag and start throwing a hook and a straight, and a boxing coach teaches me how to box, I may be very good against that punching bag, but as soon as he puts me in the ring, I'm probably going to get my butt kicked, because I haven't really tested all of these tactics and techniques that I've practiced against this bag against an actual opponent. So one of the things that we try to encourage our clients to do is make sure that you have adversarial based testing, not just pen testing, but true adversarial based testing, doing what they do, so you can see how your defenses hold up and see how you should respond. And we use Picus internally to do a lot of that ourselves and get a lot of the data that we have that we expose. And that's it. And so for Prime, do you guys want to walk through the thing, Hussein, or do you want me to step through the case study?
I can explain briefly. The thing is, the penetration testing is a well-established approach in security validation, and many of us are using. I used to be a pen tester. However, pen tests are a tool that's point in time because it's trying to take a picture of your system, try to identify vulnerabilities, try to exploit them one by one to showcase a scenario. However, how many of us are doing pen testing every day? If I were a pen tester, I would spend 3 or 4 days at least for a medium to large organization to get much information out of them and analyze the vulnerabilities and exploit them. However, many of the SMBs do not have the budget to do multiple pen tests every year. However, with the automation, we can run attack simulations back to back without inflicting any cost. And also, after I delivered the penetration testing report, many of the SMBs may not be able to take action against that pen test report and its findings. With breach and attack simulation and with the automation, we can deliver the attack, and also after the validating the identified vulnerabilities and exposures, we give a mitigation report saying that you should do this, 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 and it will be fixed. That's why in the Prime Insurance case, annual pen testing was good. However, it was not sufficient, and it should be repeated back to back so they can do all of the things a penetration tester do without human touch and without human intervention. That's the basic gist of it.
Yeah. And so with that, I want to give you guys the time. We're a couple of minutes over. I want to give you the full 15 minutes to ask questions. Shane asked a particular question, Hussein, is do you have examples of IOAs and IOCs with SIMs?
Yeah. At Picus, we have integrations with major SIEM vendors. For example, we have integrations with Splunk, QRadar, and Sentinel. And for each simulated attack, we give we give Sigma rules and vendor-specific detection rules, so you can see the performance of your SIEM system. If it's lacking, you can use those detection rules directly into your system and revalidate the attack simulation, so you can check whether it is detected or not.
And everybody, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in. James, back to your question of, what are the key steps an organization should take to defend itself? I guess could I get a response in chat? Have we answered that question, or is there a follow-up in more detail, a more detailed question that you'd like to ask that we could dive in for you? If you're still here, if we didn't bore you.
Maybe we can answer the question a little bit in depth. For example, there are hundreds of threat intelligence reports out there. With threat reports, we try to showcase what is the most exploited attack techniques each year, and we give examples from actual malware attacks found in the wild. And using those techniques, you will see, if you search through the different threat intelligence reports, you will see certain techniques are highlighted more than the others. For example, this year we seen process injection, command and scripting interpreter, and also credentials from password stores was the top 3 techniques. You will see these techniques in other reports, and you will see the pattern out there. And after that, you will target those adversary techniques and implement those into your defenses so you can defend yourself better against most of the malware out there.
And there's a fascinating statistic that came out of a joint Gartner IBM report in January that essentially comes to the conclusion that 90% of known published attacks are actually never executed. So you got to focus on the 10% in this case that really matters, which also aligns with what came out in the red report in terms of there's a lot of focus in certain areas. So couple that with what matters to a particular organization's environment, which Perry talked about earlier, because we're seeing this across the board from small companies to large. It's a story that Perry is talking about, that you got to figure out what matters to you, your environment, your situation. And that's where companies like Ridge come in, right? To help you figure out what matters.
Yeah, I think that's the struggle. And you know, the smaller the company gets, the more that struggle becomes apparent. You know, we deal with large companies, small companies, and you know, we all know that, you know, these larger companies, they have budget. They've got a red team. They've got a whole division of cybersecurity, not just like a guy. You know, there's an entire team of extremely competent people that do very novel things to be able to secure these environments. But when you start, you know, looking at our clients that got, you know, 500 employees, 300 employees, 50 employees, you know, getting to any kind of, you know, level of cybersecurity is actually a struggle, because it tends, you know, if you got 50 users, you got one or two guys. And somehow this person needs to, you know, he needs to know SAP, and he needs to know Salesforce, and he needs to know your active domain, your domain controller. And by the way, he needs to know cybersecurity. And boy, he better be able to change Nancy's battery on her keyboard. And God forbid something happens at midnight, he's not allowed to sleep. Right. So, and that's the guy that has to, you kind of navigate his way into, hey, Microsoft changed the SKU name for 15 things and added these 20 functionalities. You know, like at some point he's got to, you know, try to stay married and raise his kids. So it's a real struggle for like these mid-sized businesses. And part of what we try to do, at least we, you know, it's our objective, is to help inform, you know, people that are in that situation, to kind of alleviate a little bit of that research that they have to do, and you know, what should I be doing? Why should I be doing it? And we all know that cybersecurity it can be a never-ending pit, right? I can go in and configure things to eternity to make it secure. The question is, what matters? You know, and I agree with you, Rob, and I agree with you, Hussein. You know, trying to identify what actually matters, what actually is going to impact me, is critical. But when you don't have the ability to study it, to find out, you know, what do you do, right? And that's ideally what we try to supplement the best way that we possibly can. So for everybody on the call, because I know we're getting close to the end, the idea here for this session was to give you an overall view. So I'm not here trying to sell you or hawk you a product. There are ones, if you have questions, call me or one of our staff will happily talk to you and answer any questions that you may have about any particular area and suggest products that are good there and talk to you. But really the goal here was to give you an architectural perspective, kind of mid to high level, of what's going on. How do we defend ourselves? My team is directed to follow up on this with workshop sessions specifically for our clients. So, you know, you heard me mention Intune Suite. I'm beating that to death because it's cheap and it reduces your attack surface by so much. And I'm just starting to go to every client, goes, please just buy this. I mean, I'll give you a discount. Just get this so I feel better about you. So we're actually have sessions where we're going to walk through configurations of certain things. So it's going to be very tech heavy. So we're going to have a couple of those coming up. If you're on this webinar, we'll invite you to them. And so you can see now you've got the high level view, the idea of the architecture. And so now how do I turn the wrench, right? Because you didn't get that today. You're going to get a checklist. You know, you got the right thought process. You have an idea of the landscape, but you don't know how to turn that wrench yet. And so we're going to try to help you with a little bit more of the hands-on keyboard type of knowledge that I think would be beneficial to our clients. So that'll be coming in the future. And Federico, that's large part because of you, because you gave me that advice. What was it, 3 or 4 days ago, saying that it would be a good idea. Our clients would enjoy it. So I appreciate the advice that you and many other clients gave me, and we will be following it to give you guys some value.
We have a question in the chat. I answered it by typing, but basically, if any asset is connected to your environment in our Picus APV and ASV, we can identify vulnerable devices and we can exploit them with lateral movement tactics. For example, when I start an attack in a single machine and jump to another machine, if it's whether it is bring your own device or it's a company asset, because APV does not care. If it's vulnerable, we can exploit it, and after that, we can report back to you saying that this is the vulnerable device, this is the vulnerability, this is how you fix it. Basically, anything connected to your device can be, if it's vulnerable, can be exploited. We will not differentiate whether it is BYOD or not, because adversaries do not also.
Beautiful. Any other questions you have for us before we call this session an end and we all go back to earning our paychecks? All right, so I just want to close out saying thank you so much for giving us time. I know giving up an hour of your time is very, very valuable. It's the one thing that nobody can buy with money. So I really appreciate you spending that with us. I hope that this was valuable to you. And as we move forward with the other things, I hope they will be valuable too. If you have any feedback that could have made this better or that you wish you saw in our future webinars, please let me know. Again, the goal here is to be client-centric and attendee-centric and give you value for the time that you're spending with us. So please let us know any thoughts that you have.